All right, well, let's pick a title, and then we can let you get about your day.
Do you guys have some options?
Oh, I sure do.
He always does.
My job is to write down things that you said that would make a good title, and you got a good list this time. So I'll read through them slowly. If you hear one you like, just say yup, and I'll put a star by it, and we can pick from the starred ones.
Okay.
Where the comma goes. Not just going to be fooled by any old BS. There will be a quiz later. Like all the books tell you to. A bit of a queer duck. Because someone enters our world. Back to a place of peace, calm, and quiet. The way he frames the world. Change that trajectory, or it was supposed to be.
I think we have to go with the quiz later. I think we absolutely have to go with the quiz.
People will go, wait, there's homework?
Oh, shit, hang on. Let me get that.
All right, let me quickly record the title. Welcome to Season 6, Episode 47. There will be a quiz later.
Take notes.
This is Written on the Edge. I'm Vance Bastian here with my co-host, S.A. Baz Collins.
Hello.
And we're really glad you're here with us. Our guest today is Jay Warren. Jay Warren is a scholar, an author, a comic book reader, a lover of all things science fiction, a drinker of Belgian beers, and a transgressive fiction fanatic. Joseph, welcome to the show.
Good morning.
How you doing?
I'm doing okay this morning. Yeah, things have been a little hectic, but they're calming down now.
Awesome. So for folks who haven't heard your first interviews with us, give a quick how you became an author, but then let us know what you've been up to since then.
Sure. I started out as a poet.
But did you know it?
Oh, wow. I did know it. It's terrible. And then, over time, I just sort of discovered that long form is much more for me than short form. But, eventually I had my first novel, Stealing Ganymede, published through Rebel Satori Press, owned by Sven Davison. And we've had a long sort of publishing relationship. We're at the point now where he sort of knows what I'm going to turn in, and I know sort of what he's expecting. And so, I've been able to sort of publish with him along the way. And I just discovered a love of long form, and that's unfortunate because 80,000 words takes a while.
It does. But it's a feather in your cap every time.
Well, I hope. You know what I mean? I hope. Some of them are great. Some of them are good. Some of them, yeah. So there you go.
All right, fair enough. So since your last interview, what have you been up to?
As we're talking about today, Tygers, my newest novel just came out. Been working steadily with Sven. Rebel Satori Press, which is his press, already had an imprint called Queer Mojo, which was where all the LGBTQ books went. And they, some of them were more speculative fiction. Some of them were set in contemporary settings. Some of them were romance. Some of them were suspense thrillers. There was a lot going on there. And so one of the things that I took to him was just the suggestion, what if we made another imprint under Rebel Satori that was just queer spec fic, right? Mm-hmm. So that Queer Mojo could be the contemporary set stuff, and then Queer Space could be the spec fic, right? Mm-hmm. So your last episode where you had Jerry Wheeler on to talk about Pangs, we just published that under Queer Space.
Nice.
I was the editor on that, and that book is, if you get a chance to read that book, I'm not just saying that as someone who's invested in the imprint. I'm saying it's a damn good book.
Shout out
Yeah,
to Jerry
yeah,
Wheeler.
and it was a great premise. We really enjoyed that conversation.
It is so good, so good. And so that's what I've been mostly working on, besides, my main job where, I attempt to tell 18-year-olds where the comma goes, and they resist. But they're supposed to, right? Like 18-year-olds are supposed to resist. That's the whole point.
Right.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So.
I mean, isn't that part of the joy of teaching them?
Yeah, I mean, to sort of watch their growth over 16 weeks, and sometimes, if I haven't pissed them off too bad, they'll take the second part of the composition sequence, and so I get to know them for 32 weeks, and to sort of watch their growth over time. As I was saying, their resistance to the world, to me, is part of their strength, right? Like they're not just going to be fooled by any old BS. And so it's an interesting thing to sort of teach and at the same time try to not dampen that sort of resistance, that sort of screw you spirit of the world, right?
Right.
Today's Tom Sawyer, he's a modern day warrior, that whole thing. Yeah. And so it's I'm sorry, I turned this into pedagogy corner, but that's sort of one of the joys.
Should I start taking notes for a pop quiz?
There will be a quiz later. It's open book, but
Okay.
Nice.
So yeah, that's what's been going on. I've been very, very lucky to have stuff going on.
Very nice.
By the way, as I was saying, congratulations on the YouTube, the visual format, the way the podcast is growing.
To get people to notice.
Yeah.
As I say every single time I'm on, I'm kind of like, I keep hinting that I want you guys to bring me on as the third guy, but you just won't do it. You won't do it. Yeah, it's great. And thanks again for having me on. I appreciate it.
Oh, it was our extreme pleasure.
We will put you on the list for guest hosts if one of us is out. So
yeah,
keep your ear to the ground.
I would love that.
Nice. All right. In the meantime, let's talk about Tygers with a Y. Cover. Awesome.
Yay. Tygers. It has a fraught history, this poor book. It's not like the last one, last time I was on talking about Unbalanced Mercy. And that one had your sort of standard, starts with a kernel of an idea, goes through the edits, eventually winds up in publication, kind of smooth and very normal process. But this poor book, Oigavolt. So it started with a nightmare that I had, and got up that morning and sort of very quickly wrote down, like you're supposed to do, like all the books tell you to do. Mm-hmm. And then it slowly grew from there over time, and then we started the edit process. It's if you'll pardon my French, it's a bit of a queer doc, right? It's not a single sort of genre. It starts as one genre, and it is continuously interrupted by a different genre until it morphs into that second genre. So it starts as a sort of very sweet, sort of standard YA romance between two boys. Mm-hmm. But it's constantly being interrupted by tropes of the suspense genre until eventually it morphs itself into a suspense thriller. People shooting guns around corners and that kind of thing. Mm-hmm.
I just saw on QI that they actually have guns that do that.
And that allows me to do that. Or, as you rightly say, around a corner.
But there's another gun, isn't there? There's one that actually shoots round a corner.
Yes, there is. The Israeli army uses that, and we might even have a picture of it. It's a much more modern development. There it is.
Yeah,
that really is extraordinary. And behind, though, is the first of its kind, a very simple invention, an Australian invention in the First World War, where you see a genuine rifle on top of the trench and a thing holding it and a periscope looking through the sight. Quite clever.
Much cooler just to go.
Oh, yes. It's so right. But there it is. It was in about 1943 it was invented. They started making them in 44. It's too late. Jerry didn't win the war, as you probably know. We gave him a bit of an old spanking, as a matter of fact. But this was in great demand for, the Panzer people like them in their tanks.
Please tell me on the other side of the desk you've got the left-handed one.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that one that goes round the corner, do they have, like, ones that go that way and ones that go that way? Because that would really annoy if you ran up and you went,
yeah.
oh, no.
No, seriously.
Yeah,
They curve around corners. I'm like, are you kidding me?
I don't know what it is.
No.
I don't know about you guys, but one of the things I love visually in films and television is that moment where someone is up against the wall and they know they got to turn around and start firing at something, but this is the moment they have their big epiphany.
Right.
Their big, why am I standing here? Why are there bullets flying at me? What decisions have I made
that led me to here?
And that's one of my favorite things. And that's, there's several moments like that in the book that I got the chance to write between the three main characters. But the other thing that I did that I'm sort of proud on, I pat myself on the back, but I know that for readers, it's not going to be necessarily easy, is the book starts off at the end of the story, right? So you already know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And my hope is if I put the bait on the hook right, my hope is you'll stick around for the rest of the book to find out why it happened. So the book opens with a kid with a bunch of explosives strapped to himself, walking into the middle of a Catholic church in the middle of a wedding and blowing himself up and taking everybody else with him.
I don't remember that as part of the Mass.
I don't think that's not in the standard liturgy.
Okay.
So that, and then, you read the rest of the book to find out why it happened and so forth. And so I hope that readers will stick with me through the course of that.
So one of the things I noticed that you did was you wrote sort of a parallel timeline. You kicked off in 2015, right? The story's 2015?
Yeah. When I had the nightmare, when I started writing the book, it was 2015.
Okay.
And, the heady days of 2015, right?
Yep.
The problems we thought we had at that time.
Uh-huh.
And so I set it in an alternate 2015 because at that time I needed a culture that was obsessed with ultra conservative concepts, right? That where the worst aspects of organized Christianity had sort of run amok in society. Not to the point of dystopia, but getting there. And little did I know, all I had to do was just set it in contemporary 2021, and we would have been fine.
Right.
It would have been A-okay. And that's what I kept joking about with Sven when we were going through the third of the 5 editing processes this book has been through.
Oh my God.
As I said, it's so funny that I'm writing this in an alternate timeline when sort of many of the things, not all, I'm not going to go full, I'm George Orwell, but many of the things that the book kind of predicts have happened. We're living in a world where there are people who believe Fox News is not conservative enough, right? So now we get, what is that, Newsmax?
Newsmax.
Yep, Newsmax.
One American network, news network.
One America, that's what I was trying to think of. Yes,
okay.
Thank you. And so that's sort of the world that this exists in, a world that's gone so conservative that LGBTQ people now consider violence a legitimate political option, if that makes some sense. So, it's kind of William S. Burroughs wrote a novel called The Wild Boys. I don't know if you got a chance to read that one. It's a little weird, but I love it. And then, Duran Duran wrote the song kind of based on that.
Right.
And then, like if all of that suddenly met the second half of Fight Club, where it turns into Project Mayhem, that's sort of the book.
Wow.
That's a hell of
That's not an elevator pitch at all. Is it? Okay. I was just about to say.
How tall is that building to say all that?
Gotta be in Dubai. Has to be in Dubai.
Uh-huh.
You got 10 minutes?
Listen, let me tell you about this thing. So yeah, I'm super proud of it, and I hope lots of people get a chance to read it. I just know it's an odd little duck, but I'm so proud of it that it's floating, for one thing.
Nice. So tell me about the characters who are surviving in this world.
So the main character, Aaron, is I don't want to say he's sort of your standard teenager, because that implies that there's something called a standard teenager, and that's, but he's sort of vanilla, if that makes sense. Like, he's a vanilla kid living in a sort of vanilla world. And
Sorry,
then,
I just had that Barbie song go in my head.
there it is. I knew it. How many seconds can we play before we get copyright strike?
Right.
So
Don't think I won't put it in.
Don't they? Let's do it. I know you will. So he's just sort of living his life, and then as happens for so many of us young gay guys, we suddenly become aware of our queerness because someone enters our world, right? Like someone that we fancy, as the British say. And so he's a new kid moves into his apartment complex, which is, sort of the standard story for so many of us. Mm-hmm. And he sees that kid, and he sort of goes and hangs out with him, and they start to become attracted to each other, and all the sort of standard moves of teenage romance. And then bad things start to happen, of course, because it's a novel. And Aaron meets another new person who's moved into the complex, who's an older dude, in his mid-20s.
Oh my God, ancient. I know.
He and this new guy is he's very different, right? Like he's sort of very Aaron catches him practicing Tai Chi in the background in his backyard, and drinking tea and all this sort of stuff, and this is Marcus. And Marcus is a very, very troubled soul who has turned to violence. Like he does believe that extreme violence is a legitimate answer to the conservative mindset of the world that he lives in. And then along the way, we also meet Victor. And Victor is Marcus's sort of second in command, if you want to say that. Mm-hmm. And Victor is much more conflicted about the role of violence and the role violence plays in the political process, etc. And so these are our three main characters: is Aaron, Marcus, and Victor. And they begin that dance of coming closer together, and in the process of coming closer together, kind of changing each other in a sense. And that term that we used to throw around so much, radicalizing each other in many different ways. So, right. Yeah, and that's, there's some minor characters in there, of course, but that's excuse me, I'm so sorry. Those are my guys.
Nice. All right. Can I ask, is Aaron the one in the first scene strapped and walking into the church? Okay.
Kids.
Yeah, so definitely need to figure out how he got to that point.
How he gets to that point, it is a hell of a journey, if I do say so myself.
Sounds like it. So, did you write this because we can't be complacent in our own fight for equality?
This is, at the time,
right?
I was sort of feeling, I was having some questions about mainstream queer culture, right? This idea that the more we resemble straight culture, the better everybody's going to get along and the better everything will be.
Right, for everyone
and I had some questions. Right? And I had some questions about that. And I think maybe on some level you've nailed it, that the book was an attempt to kind of start to think about those problems, but by the end of the book, I don't know that I found any answers. I know Victor finds an answer to that question, but I don't. The lengths he has to go to find those answers, I would never want to go to. Like, I don't ever want to find myself in a shootout with the FBI. Like, that's not what I want. but I can imagine, if you find yourself in a shootout with the FBI, some things about life are going to become very clear to you very quickly. I guess.
That's intense. I mean, and here's the thing that I think is interesting. I think, and I don't know if it's necessarily we older cats in the neighborhood who are pushing this again, but I think a lot of the children, as Brother Porter likes to call
yes.
that they're starting to understand en masse, and probably at a younger age than what we felt it, that there is a reason to return to the politicization of our community, that pride must be more political going forward, that authoritarianism is hanging over our heads as much as it was in Berlin of 39.
Yes.
And I think that's a good thing for our community. I think it's our community trying to, and I take your point about us becoming more mainstream, and I kind of grind my teeth at that as well. There are pros to it, definitely, because we become more normalized, so people then don't see us as other. But that otherness is also what makes our community so rich and thriving and unique and a thing, And so, how do we strike that balance? And not only that, but how do we represent all of the elements of the queer community? Because we're not all hypersexualized. We're not all, So you have to figure out, how do we have a seat for everyone at the table, and that make everyone understand, just because someone else is at the table who may not live the life you live, that doesn't mean they're taking anything away from you.
Right.
You're only adding to the culturalness of who we are.
I think these are probably, similar in some ways to the conversation that was happening right around Stonewall, right? Like the Mattachine Society was stressing its point of view, and then there's the post-Stonewall sort of activism is the way we're going to make headway. And so I think there's were these characters more articulate, and I think that's one of their downfalls, is that they have bought into the violence so much that they're unwilling to try anything else. I think that the conversation about celebrating our own uniqueness, as you were pointing out, sometimes gets muffled because the group that is trying to or wants to be more mainstream in terms of marriage culture and having kids and belonging to the PTA, and there's nothing wrong with those things, not in any way.
Well, belonging to the PTAs.
No,
that's a Nazi organization.
From top to bottom, those bake sales.
When factories are involved, you've gone too far.
So yeah, that's sort of as you can see, there's a lot of stuff that was sort of on the boil to sort of create this book, and I just sort of hope it comes together well. Fingers crossed, right?
No, I think at least that if you're having that kind of conversation, that it can only be good for the community, because I think it makes us refine. And here's the thing that I always thought was kind of odd in a is the universe trying to tell us something? But I thought it was kind of interesting that for many major cities last year, when we were in the middle of COVID and everything, that was the year that a lot of these Pride celebrations were celebrating their 50th anniversary. I know San Francisco was, I know New York was. Yeah. So a lot of them had that, but we were deprived that because of COVID. And I always found it interesting that it was kind of our gut check on where the hell are we, in some respects. And I think a lot of people have started to figure out that everything we've enjoyed up to this point and everything we fought for is not set in stone. And we need to start reapplying ourselves. I take solace in the fact that more and more queer people are making it into mainstream media. You have many openly gay and openly queer newscasters. You have, they don't feel like they have to hide that part of themselves.
And can I point out, in sports, which shocks me.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's, I mean, I just saw Brian Williams on MSNBC. He was talking to one of his political commentators, and he stopped part of the show just to say, hey, congratulations. I saw you posted a picture of you and your fiance. You know, when would Walter of Cronkite have ever done that? You know, I mean,
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean,
exactly.
and you know, Walter was a really interesting man, but, you know, it does show the sign of the times if, you know, Brian Williams pauses a major news broadcast to congratulate a gay man on his, you know, his impending marriage. You know, I thought, wow, you know, we have come so far. But at the same time, you go, we're all on a very, very delicate rope bridge, and the Indians are descending with the hatchets to chop it on. You know?
When
Did you just make
a
that
sitting
analogy?
president,
well, yeah, I just made a Indiana Jones analogy. Our community's on the rope bridge, and there are conservative alligators down below.
I think that you know, when a sitting president can disenfranchise an entire segment of the queer population using his Twitter account from the toilet without even bothering to check with the major branch of government that would have the decision-making process over that situation, you know, we've got to rethink how stable things are, right? Like, and how they appear. So yeah, I 100% agree. And I, you know, what I fear in some level, and what's in the book is, I fear that it might take some young gay or trans or non-binary people committing an act of violence to make us have the conversation. I hope it doesn't come to that.
Well, I think that's true, that possibility exists. But what I think is interesting is that you have people like Pete Buttigieg, who is not afraid to go into the lion's den, and he comes with his homework prepped. He brings his A game. He cuts the conservatives off at the knees with their lies and bullshit. And I think we need more of those. We need more people to go into those forums and break the bubble and say, no, you're not thinking about this right here, you know, and have your ducks in a row. Know your, you know, having done your research so that you also don't bungle it, you know, in a huge way. And I think a lot of Democrats, liberals, whether you're in the center, middle, or far left, problem is they stick into that bubble, and they go into safe spaces. They don't go into the other places to challenge, which is why, you know, I know a lot of gay people have problems with Pete Buttigieg to a certain degree, because he normalizes so much of mainstream's perception of us. But at the same time, I give him kudos for, you know, stepping into the lion's den and taking them on at, you know, face to face. And 9 times out of 10, he really butchers them with all of their propaganda bullshit, you know.
Yeah, I think, you know, people being, as you said, people being willing to step into the non-safe spaces and have the conversations. And these days, there are so many of those non-safe spaces, right? Like the classroom, the floor of the Senate,
even the people on YouTube who are these, you know, like the Steven Crowder and the Dave Rubin. I mean, Dave Rubin, I just don't freaking get, because he's a gay man and he's out there touting all this Trumpist bullshit, you know, and it's like, are you kidding? You know what I mean? We have all those people too that we have to contend with, that have
and also find a way to, as we were talking about before, find a way to invite them to the table, because they're part of the LGBTQ spectrum, and we have to respect that sometimes people are going to have conservative ideals, no matter how much we may not agree with them. But gosh, they make it hard to love them, right? Like, you know, one of the things we're dealing with is that Jeffree Star has just moved to the same city I live in, and we're sort of having to deal with that, because, you know, they are a polarizing figure, shall we say?
Yes.
And so the conversation is evolving. And I think that's a good thing.
Well, I also think that, you know, it's interesting because social media plays such a big factor. And I think the regular mainstream media gives social media more due than it's worth. You know, people talk about how Twitter, you know, Twitter is a small percentage of the world's population. It is the noisiest and the most negative, but it is people don't realize how many people are not on Twitter, and they have their own opinions too, and I think that's really, and to your point, and I think this follows the line with your book, there's a great documentary out called The Social Dilemma. Everybody should watch it because it really does set your clock and make you realize just how manipulated we are, and that free isn't always free.
Well, and that conversation, I think, has evolved into the space of now people are blatantly seeing what's happening as Facebook shifts to Meta, right? And what caused that conversation and how that's going to look going forward, what that's going to do to the downstream platforms like Instagram, et cetera. It's an interesting place we're in with a lot of slippery slopes. Yes.
Yeah.
So bringing this back, is there anything else about Tygers you want people to know?
Why?
So there's a quote. Hang on, let me show you.
Okay.
The title comes from a quote. It's from. Can you see that?
The Tigers of Wrath are wiser than the horses of instruction.
Yeah, it's from William Blake's The Marriage of Heaven and Hell.
Nice.
And I thought that, that's one of the truths that's at the core of the book, is that rational, cooler heads should prevail, but they almost never do, because revenge just moves faster, right? Like, rumors move faster than truth, and revenge moves faster than forgiveness. And so I thought that quote really sort of set it in. And so initially the title was the full Tygers of Wrath, but someone was like, you know what's cooler than Tygers of Wrath? Tigers. And I went, fair enough. I will,
there you have it, people.
Right.
Breaking news.
So, was there anything else you wanted folks to know about the book?
On sale now.
Yes.
For low price of $17.95.
Nice.
From Queer Mojo. You can find us on all your standard outlets, including one that doesn't get mentioned a lot is we talk about Kindle all the time, but remember Smashwords is out there too, and it's on Smashwords, as are many of my novels, which is where if you have an e-reader that isn't Kindle, you can find other formats for your e-reader.
Nice.
So we're on Smashwords, it's on Kindle, it's on Amazon. You can also pick it up from the publisher. I'm sure there's some used copies floating around by now. It just came out in October. The only thing we don't have yet is an audiobook, and I'm slowly but surely looking into that. Audible has some very interesting programs where authors don't necessarily have to pay up front. You can do like a profit sharing with the performer. So I'm sort of looking into that to see if maybe we might do an audio version.
Nice.
Which would be very cool.
Very nice. All right, folks. Well, we at Written on the Edge are proud to introduce you to new media by queer content creators. If you enjoy learning about these artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. Now I'm going to let Baz ask Joseph some get-to-know-you questions.
And before I do that, I also just want to mention that don't forget we have a swag shop up at Redbubble.
Yes.
So go get your T-shirts, go get your, that we have the Drag You series, which are drag queens get throwing some shade. So we've got something for everybody up there. We also have our Pride Line series, which has a different queer author for each color of our rainbow and a quote that's attributed to them. So definitely check those out. And I will put the links here on the screen somewhere. You'll see it. All right. Well, what's up next? What's on the burners now that you got cooking? Other than Thanksgiving.
We're still working over at Queer Space. We've got some new books coming out very soon. JSQ's book called Sloth is coming out in December, so be on the lookout for that. Personally, I'm working on it was supposed to be a straightforward, straight down the line, LGBTQ, YA science fiction, no twists, no turns. Let's knock this thing out in a hurry. And that was in January of 2019. And I'm still writing this book. So things have gone askew a bit. And so that's sort of the next thing that I'm working on. And I've got another one that I just finished that's going to go into beta reading very soon. That's another LGBTQ science fiction, but this one is not YA. This one is very adult. So just a bunch of little irons in the fire that all kind of add up to not a lot of time to read.
So what's the best social for people to follow you and get these updates?
Best place, as always, is my website. It's www.jwarrenbooks, so J, the letter J, Warren Books, all one word, .com, and that'll have links to my social. There's also links there to purchase any of the books in multiple different formats. So that's the best place to find me. And, of course, I'm on Instagram, Twitter, and all the other stuff to help sort of promote the books and sort of have a place where people can contact me and I can contact them, that kind of thing. Will you guys have those links?
Yeah, they'll all be on your page. Yep.
Perfect.
Cool. All right, folks. Written on the Edges, produced by Rogue Ravens Media. For our disclaimers, links to social media, our listen stations, or to sign up as a guest, visit www.rotepodcast.com. If you enjoy learning about these artists, please like and subscribe so you get the alerts for new episodes. We'd like to extend a huge thank you to Jay Warren for being with us today. Thank you so much.
No. Thank you, guys. And again, as I've said many times before, and I will continue to say, thank you for not only being a great place for people in the community to come on and talk about their works, but also for always having the back of independent and small press publishers. There's not a lot of places out there that are championing us the way you guys are, and I appreciate the hell out of it.
It is our extreme pleasure. All right, folks. If you're ready for a book that will help you look at the world in a new light and question a lot of the bleep that's going on, pick up Tygers. Leave a review, don't leave a review, don't like, but read it. Thank you again. We'll talk to you all soon. Bye-bye.
Closing time. The bums rush in melody, dear.